Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast, focused on providing valuable information for anyone looking to undertake a new build or extension project. We'll share our tips, tricks and stories from a building designer's perspective.
There we go, we're on.
Big red button.
Yep, this is working.
Oh, nice.
All right, connections.
Connections.
It's,
What type of connections? You want to narrow that down a bit?
yeah, I probably should, because that could be very misconstrued into something else. Housing connections.
Which ones?
Electrical.
Yes, electrical.
Plumbing.
Which one?
What do you mean, which one?
Stormwater,
Yeah,
sewer,
yeah,
water,
yeah.
and you've got NBN.
That's not water.
No, but you still need it. Everyone's going to get upset if they don't get their NBN to the house. They're going to get seriously upset.
Well, there's different types of NBN as well, so
There is.
yeah.
Well,
So,
Launceston, it's all fibre to the house.
are you sure?
Pretty well.
So it's fibre to the node.
Yes, that's been a lot of places, but we're fortunate enough. A lot of places we've got fibre to the house.
Oh, we're doing all right.
Oh, we've done very well.
We have done very well.
Then they cut the budget, and then the rest of the country got fibre to the node and dirty copper, and I'm thinking, that's just madness.
I know, but they've got themselves sorted, I think, now, which is good.
Maybe not in the future. I reckon it's going to bite them pretty hard.
Well, they'll have to come up with something different.
Oh, I reckon they will.
They probably will. I mean, it's always changing.
Yeah, you got smart people.
You do, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll leave that
As
part up.
long as you leave the pollies out of making the decision, you're laughing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So, connections. Yeah. So, sewer, stormwater, power, water, NBN. Standard for every house lot.
What are the
But-
problems? Surely there's issues that would come up all the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I talk to some of the builders and stuff, they just roll their eyes. In Tasmania, we've got to go through, is it Transend or Aurora? They keep changing their name, but they've, get a new connection. It could take months to get a new connection. You got the connection to site, but it's actually making the connection. And commercial guys, I've heard it's just awful how long it takes. NBN's not dissimilar at times. It just takes months to get connections.
So when do the connections actually go in? Is it before the house is actually built?
You put the order in, but it's all there at the property. You've got the feed-ins already at the property. In brand new subdivisions, they're all there. It's actually making the whole connection. And that's really hard.
Yeah, right. And I guess with rural properties, which we spoke about in one of our previous podcasts, they can be a little bit more challenging, given that
Oh, definitely.
longer probably cable you've got to have to
Very
reach your
true.
property if it's a big property.
Yeah. Like if you're going, 50, 100 plus metres up the road, I mean, that could be, you got to put an overhead power line maybe, or put poles in, it could be. It's all sorts of different scenarios. With that, generally we personally don't have to be involved in that, but the builder gets their sparky to arrange a lot of those. But I've heard a lot of frustrations with it, a lot of red tape. So the rural blocks obviously don't have stormwater generally. They've got to control the stormwater on site. So you're normally going to have water tanks anyway. Some rural blocks actually have water available, as in Tassie, Taswater, who's the sewer stormwater supplier. There may be a main running past and they have to connect to it, which is good. They don't have to run on tank water. But some people obviously do run tank water and they collect it all. That's all good. Obviously, then generally they're all running on septics or wastewater systems for their sewer, so no connections. But when you're doing a rural block, you've got to consider all those things because, man, it can get really expensive, like surprisingly expensive.
So is it different for everyone in terms of the cost? Like, is it dependent on like how far away?
How far, how long, how difficult. It's custom. When you look at general rural blocks, it is all custom and for all the individual sites because you don't know where the house is going. There's acreage, acreage blocks. It could be 4 or 5 acres, subdivided that way. Generally, they do have a lot of the services coming to them. But that depends where you are, which municipality you're in. But if you go back to the residential blocks, they all should be, your standard residential, anywhere from 400, 700, 800 square metres. They should have all the services connected. You should. I've got a perler of one where we had a brand new subdivision up in Trevellyn, just outside of Launceston, and brand new subdivision. And we looked and we do our checks, looking for all the connections and stuff. But we noticed something on there. There was something weird. There was sewer, stormwater crossing over and boundary lines crossing over, and I think there was connection. Anyway, we assumed brand new subdivision's got to have a sewer connection. Anyway, get to build it. There was no sewer connection for this brand new block.
That would delay a lot of things too, I imagine.
Oh, it caused absolute carnage.
Oh, no.
And what was interesting about that, the developer, for whatever reason, it didn't actually put it in for one block. But when TasWater did their checks, they missed it as well. So it went through a whole quality checking system, missed it completely. And what really sucked though, the actual landowner had to pay for the new connection.
How does that work?
Yeah, that's what we thought.
Yeah,
I would have gone back to the developer and said, surely. Anyway, they didn't have time to muck around because they're building a brand new house. So they had to get that sorted. So the plumber, the builder, and we chipped in a little bit to talk to TasWater, and TasWater were accommodating, reducing the costs considerably and allowing the plumber to do the connection which they didn't normally allow. So I think it ended up costing them about 30-40% of the actual normal cost. Still wasn't right, they were on a tight budget.
So, yeah, I guess it's something that you would have to pop into your contingency at the beginning.
But to be fair, you buy a brand new block, you'd expect you have everything there, wouldn't you?
You would.
It was really odd. It was really odd at the time.
I mean, how would you even go about fighting something like that? Because I guess something like that, I mean, how often does it even happen?
Very rare. The quality, to be fair, TasWater are very, in Tasmania being the sewer stormwater authority, they're very thorough now. They're very good, and they take ownership of it. So they're hard as nails to make sure that everything's done correctly. So it's very rare that you have that. You get a few anomalies every now and then. The ones you probably find is council stormwater. We had one where they had all these IOs, their inspection openings. So you had a piece of pipe coming out of the ground with a cap on it, and they were sprayed blue. So, no, it was blue-green. Anyway, they sprayed the wrong caps for the stormwater connection. So
what did they spray then?
Well, they sprayed the wrong... Yeah, well, that's a fair point. Because what it was a brand new subdivision. They built a big retaining wall at the back to build the blocks level and stuff like that. No big deal. It was a bit unusual. Anyway, we did the house and did the connection, and the plumbing department, I won't mention which municipality because I don't like working for this one, actually, for this exact reason. They kept sending us requests for more information. Your plumbing is wrong. That's all they said. We tried to ring them, never rang back. And in the end, we rang 7 times, we worked out, over a week and a half period, and they never rang us back, not once. Not even an email response, nothing. Our customers went in there, they got an audience straight away.
Wow.
And all they said to them, the plumbing's wrong. Now, what we found out later on, once we got investigated, and we got through, we got a little bit grumpy with them, was that someone sprayed the caps wrong because these were inspection openings for the retaining wall ag drains, so they could inspect and make sure they're clean. They sprayed the wrong caps. The connections were a couple of metres the other way, and they weren't painted.
Oh,
so our surveyor picked it up, and it was just incorrect identification on site. Yet if someone from the plumbing department said, hey, just connect to this one rather than this one, they got it wrong. That's all they had to say, and would have saved 2 weeks of aggro.
Yeah, well, the message wasn't very specific, so it does make it a little bit difficult to know what's got to be changed.
I think I can be a mind reader sometimes with the customers, but not with the plumbing departments.
That's fair enough.
So yeah, look, and this is all the new stuff, but you got old stuff. You get an old house, Launceston, it's well over 200 years old, and you've got whole subdivisions that have got combined sewer and stormwater, which can make it quite interesting. And it can be hard to locate because they have poor record keeping. So you got to get a specialist in for underground assets, and they run a camera down the sewer or the stormwater line, and they run a little camera on a cable down the pipe, and then they can locate it.
That's cool. I have actually seen that before because we've got a property that did have a broken pipe, and they put a camera down there and took photos and then sent it back to us.
Cool camera.
Yeah, it is very cool.
And cool videos, or sort of cool,
If you can see through it. I mean, we had tree roots and stuff, so there wasn't a real lot to see past a certain point.
And it's really important for us as designers to know where this stuff is, but also how deep it is. As you can imagine, if we do an extension on a house and the existing house works fine, we put an extension on, and it may not have enough fall, it's not deep enough to naturally fall the sewer to this connection. So we need to know that really early on, because we need to do some choices of positions of plumbing fixtures inside the extension, or we lift it up or do something like that.
That's a really good point. Actually, how do you even find out how deep the pipes actually go without having to dig?
Well, you dig or use the camera, because they know the depth. So they can tell where the camera sits. So they put marks on the ground. They know how deep it is.
Oh, they're clever cameras.
It's very clever cameras, and they can crawl through all sorts of little hidey holes. They're very cool. Yeah.
So what do we need to do, kind of going back a few steps, what do we need to do sort of as building designers? What are the steps in order to plan out all of the connections if they're not there?
Well, we actually don't know if they're not there sometimes. We actually don't know what condition they are. We don't know a lot of things, and that's part of, as a designer, and if you choose to do the plumbing drawings, some people get hydraulic engineers and other specialists in, that's fine, but as building designers, and especially specifically in Tasmania, we're allowed to draw up this. But you've got to take it seriously. You've got to find out where you can connect to, how deep it is, do the investigation, spend a little bit of money. And it's not expensive. Getting one of those cameras in might be anywhere between $400 to $600. It's a lot cheaper than digging up, the whole front yard or backyard trying to find
definitely.
a pipe. And that's what we used to do years ago. So there's lots of... It's practice and experience, knowing that, right, I don't know what it is, I've got to figure this out. Or alternatively, we find there's a sewer main running through the backyard. Launceston, because it's so old, doesn't necessarily have easements on the titles. So an easement is allowing a space for a pipe to run through, or services to run through, drainage easements they call them. Some of the stuff in Launceston and Hobart is so old. There's just a line on some random council map, but it's not actually on your title to say that. And that's part of the investigation early on, to see where this pipe is, because you still can't build over it. You can't build too close to it. So there again, you've got to do an investigation. That's part of the start of the job. We do an investigation. Yeah. So you see those challenges with the existing homes, or a vacant site that's really, really old. It's been vacant for 70, 80 years.
Yeah, and I guess if they don't have the correct documentation, then you don't really have a lot to go off.
Well, we're pretty fortunate. Taswater has a GIS, so global. What is it, GIS? Yeah, Global Information System, I think it's called. And you go online, you can have a look. We do a search for it, but as they say, it's not 100% accurate. So you still need to locate it correctly. And even to the point, if a neighbouring property has a sewer line going through, it's not on your property, but you're building close to it, you have to locate it to make sure that it's actually there.
So who would actually do all of the location of the services? Is there someone that's employed to do that?
Yep, you've got specialist companies. Here we have companies called AJ Water, Arches Underground, Viola. There's a whole bunch of guys that can do it. Some of them are better than others because they specialise in this small stuff. And then you also engage your land surveyor to come in and pinpoint where it is. Once they've been there, they've marked out, they actually survey where the marks are and the depths. and then they connect it to the survey of the property and connect it to the floor level. So so then we can accurately model that in our drawings, and doing that at the start identifies any potential issues. Don't build too close to it.
I imagine there'd be regulations around that as well, how close you're allowed to build to certain services.
Yep. Sewer, stormwater, generally 2 metres, but you can get up to a metre. As you know, the depth, you then have to design the footings to make sure it doesn't put any earth pressure on the pipes. Water mains, same thing. If it's a water main that's servicing a whole area, you've got to keep a certain distance off that as well. That can be a metre. And just remember, it's not the wall, it's the roof overhang that has to have the separation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, you think about it. If they've got to go in there and fix it, they've got to get an excavator in there.
Of course, yeah.
And then the excavator goes, it's going to take the roof out.
Yeah, they can't get, And
that's why they do it. A lot of people ask, well, why don't they have this on record? It says, well, Taswater should know where their stuff is, or the council should know where their stuff is. Well, the record keeping for the past 200 years hasn't been real flash. So some of the stuff's so old you can't find it. So you've got to physically go searching for it. And that's part of the job that we arrange at the start.
Wow. So I guess we can organise all of those reports and stuff to be put together early on before even the building design process.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's part of the prerequisite. We put conditions in there that we need to investigate this. Because you don't want to design something, then all of a sudden, sorry, there's a pipe there. It's a bit ass about, You really got to find out what your limitations are on the site.
It would definitely throw a spanner in the works, that's for sure.
Yeah, and also, it's not great dealing, the customer, you let them down a path of its design, and they say, sorry, can't do it. There's the pipe there. That's pretty ordinary.
Yeah, and you kind of have to double back again, I guess, as well.
Yeah, but we're the professionals. We should do our best in trying to find all the information, no different for planning services, any other potential landslip risks, overlays, or, that any zoning may have on it, any other restrictions. So that should be known before you even start sketching.
And what about, for example, say you've got a really slopey block. How is that going to affect your services? I'm thinking, I guess, more so towards plumbing and water services, because that would obviously change probably the cost and where you can put things, maybe.
To be fair, new subdivisions are designed very well. The sites can generally be serviced. That's what we call servicing the site. Can the whole site be serviced? In places like Longford, it's really, really flat. They have trouble with their stormwater, and we have to, when we're doing extensions, new homes, or whatever, we have to really be conscious of the stormwater component. Stormwater is a bit easier to deal with than sewer. As you could well imagine, sewer needs to be a little bit steeper. It's got different bits going down the pipe. So that has to be a minimum of 1 in 60. Stormwater is 1 in 100.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So steep blocks is actually not as bad as you think sometimes. It's usually on older blocks where it hasn't been as well thought out, and the whole block might not be able to get fall to the services. Or you might find at the back of the block that the sewer main actually runs through your site, about 2/3 up from the back of the lot, and that means the lower part, that lower third of your block, actually can't be serviced. You can't fall it back to the sewer. Then people ask, just put a pump in. Pumps are really expensive. They're called macerator pumps, so all the bits that go on your server go on a pump.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, put a nice way of putting it. But we've had to do it in some cases. We had no choice. So you've got to put a whole well in, put a pump in, choose it up, spits it out, and squeezes it through a smaller pipe and squeezes into a normal sewer pipe. But they are expensive. They've got to have floats in there and alarms, and and the alarms have to go back to the house. So, for example, if the sewer pump fails or stops working, it's got to have enough capacity in it for a period of time that the house can still use it, which sounds really disgusting because then you've got to go change the pump out.
Oh, I don't need to know the details of that.
I'm glad I'm not a plumber. I'm just saying that. Anyway, but it's true. This is how it's got to work. And you put a pump straight in, click it all up, bang, it starts chewing away and literally pushing poo uphill sometimes. So, and then it affects, this sounds weird, but then it affects your water connection. So, if you've got a pump on your system, you need to have taps nearby because you may need to clean it down or whatnot. There's potential contamination go through the water line, back up through. And
you don't want that.
No, you don't. Sounds nasty, but the Tas Water put what is like an RPZ, so a restriction in there, so then no contaminants can go back and contaminate
Your other water.
Yeah, it just contaminates what's on their site. So you can't contaminate anyone else. But like I said, it's rare that we have to put pumps in because they're expensive.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a bit of the interesting stuff with connections.
I don't know, that's a bit nasty, really.
Some of it is. Let's talk about the sewer, the stormwater. Sometimes we've got to put detention, and this is all over Australia. Our ageing stormwater systems can't handle the amount of stormwater. Our rainfall intensities are changing. So some sites may require a tank to hold a certain amount of water, stormwater, and then it slowly releases over time. They mainly do that on multi-residential, but we're starting to see it on some houses because they're at the more subdivisions are being part of the catchment area that goes into the stormwater, and the old infrastructure can't handle it. So then it could be an above ground water tank that slowly lets out the water. It could be an in-ground tank. So they're detention basins.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Well, not really. It's just an extra expense and it can be annoying.
Is that because of lot sizes becoming smaller too?
Not necessarily. It's just purely the amount of water being collected going through a stormwater system that was designed 40, 50, 100 years ago. And it physically can't handle the volume of water that's being collected.
No,
so councils restrict how much water gets released, and the only way you can do that is each lot is in control of how much water it actually releases. So all the councils get studies done on their catchment areas and stormwater capacities and stuff like that.
And probably average household use, I guess, as well, maybe?
Oh, that's on the sewer side, not so much the stormwater side. Yeah. But things are changing, and this is all over the country. You see subdivisions that got big dams next to them. They're like a detention basin, and they only fill up when there's a storm event.
Which hopefully isn't too often.
Well, we've just had it again recently.
We have, yes.
That was a decent pour, but the flooding was restricted. Well, Launceston, we were pretty lucky, weren't we?
We were all right.
Hobart, they weren't too bad compared to that one, 3 years ago, the 1 in 113. That caused total carnage. Wrecked everything.
Yeah.
Blew out bottoms of houses, knocking retaining walls. It was insane what it did at Hobart.
Crazy. I guess we weren't as prepared back then either. This time it sort of felt like there was more preparation.
Yeah, but the councils have also got to spend the time maintaining all their infrastructure and cleaning it out.
Yeah, that's very true. I didn't think about that. And what about as a homeowner? Do you have to do any of that sort of stuff yourself?
Of course. If you've got drains around pits and drains and whatnot, you've got to maintain it. No different. You should be maintaining your gutters. Box gutters, how I love those things.
You love the box gutters.
Not. But box gutters need a lot of maintenance to make sure there's not full of rubbish. So, no different to your pits and stuff around your house. You should have lots of drainage pits around your house. I've got a saying, and I keep saying it says, too much drainage is never enough. And I say that because when you don't have enough, it's carnage around your house. There's water everywhere.
Swimming pool.
It's a swimming pool. It will go into your house, or if you've got 2-story, or it goes under the floor. That's never ever good. And old houses had really poor drainage around them. So putting too much in is fine. It does the job. You'll never ever notice it. You'll never have a problem. So it's always worth considering. We put a lot of drainage around houses for our new house designs purely for that. And for the cost of being done at that time, it's very cheap. And it can save a lot of damage to your house.
Yeah, I mean, it's only really keeping the insurance companies in business.
Yeah, but I've seen whole lack of drainage cause footings to move.
Oh, that could be problematic.
Yeah, well, no, because you can see it cracks. I've seen, especially on timber floors, on reactive soils, and they haven't got drains around the site properly. I've seen whole walls crack inside, all the corners cracking, floors lifting, dropping, all sorts of stuff. And it's surprising. Until you actually get to see it, it blows your mind. And you think it wouldn't happen to you. But these guys, I remember one in particular, we crawled under the floor, all the inside, all the plaster was cracking, floor gaps between skirting boards. There was a big crack in one wall. And we did this investigation and we ended up running a level under the floor and we found all these piers had dropped inside, but the outside lifted and a bit because it was wet outside but dry underside, so the clay shrunk inside, but on the outside the clay swelled. And then it cracked on the outside, the floor dropped, so then all the internal floors dropped slightly, and the house is not even 12 months old.
Oh, wow. And it needed pretty much re-engineering.
Not really. No, it was actually an easy fix.
Really?
Yeah, we were.
Wow.
So in this case, we went underneath, and we call it a bit of settling as well. In the case of where the cracking of where the wall was, we found one problem. It was to do with the timber floor, and the end of the bearers were hard up against the brickwork. You've got to leave a gap. They swelled and popped the brickwork out. So it's very unusual that builders, it was just an oddball thing. Someone had, the brain. They just did something stupid. They don't do it. Because a lot of builders have learnt that you don't put the bearers hard up against the brickwork. It's supposed to have a good gap in there. Anyway, blew the bottom of the brickwork out. It caused another crack. So we found that problem, got it fixed, and it was fine. But all the internal stuff, all we had to do was wedge up the floors. All the cracks, you could barely see them again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just gave it a paint touch up, seal it. It was good. And the house has been good ever since.
Oh, that's good.
But we did advise and put lots of drains around the house.
Oh, I reckon. So moral of the story, make sure you have sufficient drainage.
But how do you know?
Well, you go to a building designer and you get them to organise checks that you have all of the necessary services on your block.
But here's the other thing. You want to do your landscaping, right? How do you know if you've got enough drainage in your landscaping? Have you put ag drains behind your retaining walls?
Oh, surely landscapers would know that though.
Some are very good, and they really do know this. Some are klutzes. They don't. And they don't connect them properly. And I've seen it where they don't connect and there's water pouring out the end. So, drainage connected to all the stormwater system and do it really well won't cause you any problem. And also you don't have a boggy backyard or front yard.
No one likes a boggy backyard with bits in it.
No, with no bits in it. Don't want bits.
No bits. We'll wrap it up there.
Okay.
You're listening to the Building Design Prime Time podcast.